Initially, I wanted to film a video analyzing Shane's choice to hire a stylist just before the All Stars weekend and the symbolism of that choice, considering how well it fit narratively, with the decision for him to finally admit to himself that he's very much gay. But then I realized that rather than just focus on that, it would be great instead to look at the characterization of Shane Hollander, especially as it pertains to his very active choice to outsource his creative endeavors and decisions, because it does say a lot about the type of person he is and the type of hockey player he is, in contrast, of course, to Ilya Rozanov. Because it's those little things that do give further depth to Shane as a character and also makes his choices ones that speak volumes within the story itself. Of course, before I go into all of that, I would at first like to express my apologies for the long break. I caught the nastiest of flus that had me laid out on my bed, barely able to leave it for over 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks of lethargy, sustaining on fluids, and sleeping like the dead for several hours at a time. I hate being ill. So yeah, my apologies in that regard. I will of course also like to say thank you, however, to everyone who's reached out in concern, and also a big thank you to my lovely Patreons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that out of the way, let's come back around to Shane Hollander and his choice to outsource any sort of creative pursuits. Because, like I said earlier, I really do think it matters as it pertains to his characterization. The first time we're given a glimpse of this is back when he and Ilya were about to have penetrative sex for the first time. He sends Ilya the address to the sex condo he had purchased. I know the show doesn't actually go into details at this point, and it's meant to look like Shane purchased the building for investment purposes, but in the books it is spelled out quite clearly. The investment was secondary. The primary reason why Shane bought the building was so that it would make it easier and more private for he and Ilya to have sex there, rather than constantly having to sneak around in hotel rooms, which afford way too much risk and guilt as well, because Shane doesn't really like the messy sheets. So yeah, as I was saying, Shane shows off the space to Ilya, and when Ilya gets to the bedroom and sees the astronomical number of throw pillows present and asks Shane if his mother bought them for him, it's meant to immediately highlight something very important about Shane that Ilya is very aware of. Shane Hollander is not the type of man to waste his time buying fancy designer pieces for his home. He is a character who is very much utilitarian in his approach, whether it comes to his meal prep or his home decor, and Ilya can tell at a glance that fancy throw pillows is not Shane's style, but also it's a nod to the fact that Ilya is aware of just how much control Yuna has over Shane's life and how Shane and Yuna have worked out an understanding on her taking care of the mundane everyday decisions for him so that Shane can focus completely on playing hockey, since that is what is most paramount for him and has been for him. However, that might have been for a younger Shane, but things are different now. And so what we are meant to immediately understand is that Shane, who admits to Ilya that the throw pillows hadn't been purchased by Yuna like Ilya had assumed, but had been purchased alongside a lot of the other decor present in the apartment by a designer slash decorator that Shane had hired. As such, we are meant to immediately understand two things. One, Shane truly had reached the point in his career where money was definitely no longer a problem, and he can now easily afford to buy twin condos and furnish them with a money is not a problem attitude, but also that Shane, who up until that point had relied on his mother for a lot of his decisions, was getting to the point where he could now hire professionals to get that done for him. It was a crucial and significant first step, albeit one that a lot of people tend to gloss over because he and Ilya were joking in that moment, and a lot of us were more focused on it being their first time going all the way. And so it becomes a blink and you miss it moment. But not for me, though, because for me, it ties back significantly to the cottage. Although I will get back to that in a bit. Then there's the bit with Shane's wardrobe change, which we, alongside Ilya, get a bird's eye view to when he shows up in Florida for the All-Stars weekend. Now, am I going to admit that I am still baffled at the costume designer's choice to put Shane in a jacket in Florida at a time when the weather is clearly meant to be hot as fuck? Yes. That was certainly a choice, but I do know they were going for the Shane looking snazzy in his outfit look, so I will allow it, I guess. But back to the point, Shane shows up all dressed up. Ilya has this moment of dread and panic, convinced that Shane was about to tell him that he and Rose were serious and committed. Because, you know, a well-dressed Shane clearly means that Rose has taken him shopping. What can I say? That is something else that I enjoyed about the books in that scene. Ilya was an absolute mess, and I loved every moment of it. But yes, Ilya's curiosity about the change in Shane's wardrobe, and Shane confesses that he hired a stylist to give him a different look from the athleisure wear that's been a staple for him to Ilya's sheer delight. Now, that entire bit of dialogue is one that's always fascinated me because clothes serve as such a great visual shorthand and symbolism in stories, particularly in visual mediums like movies, shows, and theater. Clothes do make a man after all, and a wardrobe change can take a character from a down on their luck bottom of the social ladder specimen to someone cultured and genteel, a la Eliza Doolittle from George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion or its famous adaptations, My Fair Lady. And the same can be said to apply to Shane. The costume designer for the show did mention in an interview that we see Shane in a lot of linen pieces because they denote comfort, yes, which is a big deal for Shane, but also linen has longevity, which means that Shane, who is focused completely on his game and needs clothes that feel right and he doesn't have to worry about them falling apart after he's worn them, gets to appreciate that choice. These are two considerations that Una Hollander has in mind when she's purchasing clothes for her son, hence why she gravitates towards linen pieces for him. And sure, they might be a bit boring for a multi-millionaire like Shane, but remember, he is utilitarian in his approach and the clothes work for him. Now, according to the costume designer, Una has been buying Shane's clothes since before Shane can remember, and that has always worked well for him, which is why the switch to the stylist matters as well. Just like with the interior decorator but the throw pillows in his apartment, we are meant to read it as Shane making the conscious decision and effort to step out of his comfort zone and try something new, something different. It is a decision he's making to assert his independence, one where he gets to move away from what is expected of him, what is known about him, to try something different. Of course, it's meant to coincide perfectly with that moment, since this is the point where Shane has actively decided to be honest with himself and Ilya about who he is. He's a gay man and what he wants and doesn't want. He and Rose are broken up. He's decided to stop pretending to be someone that he isn't, and his hiring of his stylist is meant to signify a reinvention of self that is built on honesty whilst also aiming to look good. The fact that he gets to do that outside of Una's control and influence is a big deal. Now, this is not me saying that Una is a terrible mother or that Shane doesn't think he can be himself around his mother, by the way. I have made a ton of videos where I have highlighted how amazing of a mother I think Una is, albeit one who is flawed and believes that things need to go a certain way in order to secure Shane's future. And make no mistake about that, all of Una's decisions are focused on securing Shane's future. That is what she considers a priority as far as she's concerned when it comes to her son. No, when I say outside of Una's control, I merely mean that Shane has always felt the need to perform and acquiesce a lot in front of his mother as a result of him at the time not not wanting to come out to her. And so that affects a lot. Juggling that alongside needing to focus on hockey and his career meant that he wasn't able to give enough attention to any other seemingly unimportant tasks, which is why his go-to has always been to outsource them to others. Now, this is why the cottage is so important. It's the first time we see him actively invested in something that isn't hockey. He didn't just buy the property and slap a couple of things on it. He had it built to the specifications that he wants and with the design he had in mind. It's what makes the cottage home for Shane, unlike any other property he owns at the time, because he really did invest time and effort and his own vision into it. I know the show doesn't take the time to dive deeper into the mini docuseries that feature the cottage for Shane and the numerous sports cards that he owns for Ilya, as we got in the book. But even within the show, Shane does tout the cottage as his haven, this space of solitude where he gets to be himself, no pretense needed, and he gets to have that, share that with Ilya. The cottage is the one place outside hockey where Shane gets to display full agency and gets to make his own choices, and it's why for me it's the space that it ends up being, a place where he and Ilya can agree to be utterly honest with each other and where they get to speak their feelings into words. There is a symbolism in the fact that Shane, who up until that point had outsourced such creative endeavors to others until it came to this particular building that he wanted to be built exactly how he wants it to be, and thus created a safer space for himself and Ilya to be as open and unfettered as they want to be, with the solitude and privacy to bask in it. And I mean, it is a beautiful space. It's not needlessly cluttered with things that he doesn't want. Throw pillows. Instead, it's a space that is warm and inviting and homey, with just that bit of utilitarianism that fits Shane to a T. And I don't know, I really do appreciate this characterization of Shane Hollander, where he gets to pass off the bits that don't matter as much, that he feels okay with outsourcing to others. But when it is uber important to him, he steps in to make all the decisions and proves that he can get it right when he wants to. It just has to be worth his while after all. And I don't know about you, but I find that pretty damn satisfying. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would as always love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.